This is Vlad with rarefoundation.com. It is December the 14th of 2025, the day of the Bondi attack on a Jewish community event in Australia. We are here with Robert Spencer. I'm going to say probably in the top two or three experts in the world on Islamic doctrine and on Islamic history, in the Anglosphere for sure. Robert, thank you so much for being with us here at Rare Foundation today. It's quite an event that happened. But then not that different than what's been happening at Christmas markets for years now. What are your thoughts on this? What does it mean, and what should people take from this?
Well, that's a very important point in itself, lad, that the ideology behind this attack is exactly the same 100%, with no difference whatsoever from the ideology of those who've been attacking the Christmas markets in Europe. Now, a lot of people don't realize that because the targets in Bondi Beach were Jews and the targets at the Christmas markets were Christians. And so they tend to think, oh, these people in Australia, they're angry about Israel and about Gaza and so on. And the people who are attacking the Christmas markets, that's a whole different situation. But actually, there is no reason in the first place for the attacks on the Christmas markets at all, except for the jihad ideology that underlies this attack at Bondi Beach as well. The reason is that people don't get this is because the Israeli defensive war against Hamas has been weaponized in order to bring a lot of people into support for what is an Islamic jihad who otherwise would not have supported it. And somehow these people, when they note that there are attacks on the Christmas markets, never seem to stop and wonder, well, why are they being attacked? It's not as if there's some Christian land that is attacking Muslims or something. I mean, of course, a lot of Muslims would say, the United States is a Christian land and it is carrying out imperialist war in Iraq and Afghanistan, or at least was, and so on. But really, this is getting to be more and more of a stretch. The most obvious answer and the clear tie between the two is that Islam is political, aggressive, and expansionist, as well as violent. And it calls for warfare against and the subjugation of both Jews and Christians. And consequently, Muslims are going to attack Jews and Christians. And they're going to target particular situations where the Jewish and Christian identity is strongest. So on Bondi Beach, they attack a Hanukkah celebration, and in Europe, they attack the Christmas markets. So it's as if they're making the point that we are attacking you because you're Jews, and because you are Christians, and because Islam calls us to wage war against both Jews and Christians. But these things continue to elude Western analysts because they don't know anything about Islamic theology, and they assume that Islam is peaceful, tolerant, and benign. And so when you come to them and give them these explanations, they say, oh, you're just being racist and Islamophobic.
Well, I mean, Quran, I think in four different places has variations of that, the believer will attack the unbeliever until there is no more fitna and all religion is for Allah. I mean, I read that. I mean, the nice thing about the Quran is it's actually pretty clear and pretty explicit it's not very allegorical, and it's imperative. So I would interpret that as Muslims are instructed to attack everything that isn't Muslim in terms of a religious or a cultural system until there is no religious or cultural system that is Islamic. And, several years ago here in Ottawa, there was a Buddhist temple near a new mosque, and the Buddha was destroyed, and there was vandalism done to the house, and the statuary for the Buddhist place was all trashed, and the head was cut off the Buddha. And it's like, okay, I see that as all manifesting as exactly the same thing. This is about fighting the unbeliever until there's no more fitna. All religion is for Allah.
Precisely. It's exactly the same thing. And I would guarantee you, I haven't heard about this incident, but I would guarantee you that Ottawa police were completely mystified and said, we can't figure out why anybody would have wanted to do this. because they have determined, they've committed as a matter of policy, as have authorities all over the West, to the idea that Islam is harmless. And so when they see something like that, you and I see it and realize, so that's entirely the modus operandi of Islamic jihadis, and especially the beheading of the statue of the Buddha. It's very clear what's going on there, but they cannot and will not admit that even to themselves. And so they go around saying something like a guy screaming Allahu Akbar and stabbing random people on the street. His motive is unknown, and they can't figure out why he would have done this.
But that is so consistent that they constantly say this is terrorism, which is tactical. It's not strategic. Terrorism is a method. It's a means to an end. You can't fight a tactic. So the problem is terrorism, and it's consistent that they never mention Islam. Mark Carney said Islamic values are Canadian values, like just a couple of weeks ago. There seems to be an almost, let's say, consensus amongst world leaders and media to deliberately move the bullseye away from Islam as the cause of all this. What do you think the purpose of that could be?
Well, I think that the purpose is ultimately to render Western populations ignorant and complacent so that they don't question the mass Muslim migration and the intentional destruction of the national character of the various countries of the West. The left is pursuing this because they're socialist internationalists. They want to destroy the nation state and put in its place a socialist internationalist megastate. They think they can use Islamic jihadis to help them further that end, and then they'll be able to control them. They're in for an unpleasant surprise in that regard if they do prevail, which is not guaranteed. If they do prevail and it's just them and the jihadis left, then I expect what will happen will be much like what happened in Iran when the Ayatollah Khomeini allied with the communists in Iran. They were all happy when he took over, thought they would get a place in the government. Instead, they got nice places in the prisons and were ultimately killed. And so this is an extremely short-sighted alliance, but you're absolutely right, Vlad. It is a concerted effort. I've seen it for over 20 years now, tracking this every day at Jihad Watch, that there is a concerted effort on the part of the political and media establishments to obscure any kind of connection between Islam and attacks that are carried out in its name and in accord with its teachings, such as the one we just saw at Bondi Beach. This is very clear once again, and he's only the 10,000th guy to do this, in the statement of Prime Minister Albanese of Australia, who does not mention Jews and does not mention Islam in his statement after the attack. He knows that if he mentions Jews, he will enrage his Muslim community and he won't get their votes. And he knows if he mentions jihad, he will enrage his Muslim community and not get votes. And so he makes a bland statement hoping that he'll get away with not having to say anything or commit to any action to prevent this in the future. And he knows the media will back him up on that and not ask him any tough questions.
Lastly, because I know you're very, very busy, I'm sure. Lastly, the various governments across Europe have been canceling Christmas festivals, national festivals, and New Year's Eve across Europe. I think France today just announced it wasn't going to have any New Year's Eve celebrations. So what I'm going to ask you, it's sort of two questions in one, is if you were going to chart in your 20-year experience of carefully observing this from a foundation of understanding of the threat doctrine behind this, where would you chart, you are here on a time map of the complete destruction of all overt displays of Western culture, and secondly, going forward, how would you recommend that people in the United States and Canada and the Anglosphere and Western Europe, how should they respond? Should they go to Christmas markets? Should they go to churches? Should they emphasize their own cultural things, whether governments make them official or not? Or what's the right course of action? Where are we and what should we do, in other words?
People should not be terrorized. The whole idea is to terrorize us into submission. We should not be afraid. Yes, some people are going to get killed. Actually, everybody's going to die ultimately. And the worst thing is to live as a coward. Go out, go to the Christmas markets, go to church, stand up for your own values, throw these bums out, and get some new political leaders who will reassert the national integrity of the countries involved and carry out the deportations of these illegal migrants and the migrants who refuse to accept the values of the host country. These are some basic steps if they want to survive. If they don't do those things and other things that are connected to those things, then they will end up like this. France is already not having Christmas and New Year's celebrations. Soon they will be banned. They will be forbidden as a matter of national harmony. And ultimately, if France keeps going, and Germany and Britain and Sweden and the rest, if they keep going the way they are, they're going to look like Egypt, where there's a minority of native Christians who are subject to sporadic and ongoing low-level persecution, and sometimes high-level, and there is a dominant Muslim majority that has completely taken over and overwhelmed and transformed the nation's character. This is what Europe is looking at today. They are refusing to look at the lessons of history. I commend everyone to read my book, The History of Jihad, which shows that every last country that is now Islamic was once not Islamic. They were Christian, they were Zoroastrian, they were Hindu, whatever, and they all were subject to the process that we are seeing happening in the West today. And that means that we know what is happening in the West today and how it will turn out. And don't think we're going to be any different. They don't have a different Quran or a different Muhammad in the West. And so the time has grown very short. We can turn this around, but there has to be the resolve to do so and the knowledge of what needs to be done. And right now, still, I don't see either of them on the horizon.
Robert Spencer, thank you so much for taking the time out to do this with us on this particularly horrifying day. And I think it's the first day of the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. So, we should keep our eyes, I guess, on Twitter, the only chance we have of getting any actual information. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.